Call the City Council Committee the whole meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. But like allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, quickly to the roll.
Alderman Johnson.
Here.
Alderman Fairwell.
Here.
Alderman Rita. Alderman Montoya. Alderman McGee.
Here.
Alderman Carr. Here. Alderman Roll.
Here. I need a motion to approve the minutes from the committee of the whole meeting on August 10th, 2022. And the motion, Alderman McGee, second by Alderman Fairwell. On the question. My clerk will do the roll.
Alderman Johnson.
Aye.
Alderman Fairwell.
Aye.
Alderman McGee.
Aye.
Alderman Carr.
Aye.
Alderman Roll.
Aye.
5 ayes, Your Honor.
Carries. Any public comments? Public comments? Any public comments? Now moving on. Discussion of dedication of training center. Chief.
Good evening, Alderman, Mr. Mayor, Madam Clerk. Quite simply, we turned the abandoned 911 center into a really nice training center. It has been approved by the NEWR and the state training, the state training standard. The Training and Standards Board of Illinois is coming to certify it as well. It holds 24 participants. We have a dedicated training sergeants. While we were constructing it, the deputy chief and I began talking about what it meant to us internally, and then we remembered the Schultz family, both Sergeant Schultz, who was with us for a number of years, great mentor of mine and of the deputy chiefs, and then also his son, David Jr., who was killed over in the Middle East, coming up about 15 years now. So we don't have the proper name set in stone just yet. We're still in discussion about it. We have included the Schultz family, Marjorie, Becky, and Doug. They're aware of it. So we're all going to get together and try to settle on a name that would best incorporate contribution, both of them, to the city of Illinois. All right.
Thank you. Any Alderman?
Just that someone has been able to make some good use of the facility. It is really nice, and it's a great additional meeting room for what our fourth neighborhood watch groups meeting in there, and it's a really nice facility for that. It's a little more comfortable than in here. It's just a little more intimate, I guess. Yes. So it's worked very nice. It's had additional benefits.
Thank you, Chief. If you all don't want to look at it, they haven't seen it yet. They're open later.
Absolutely.
And we'll do it with all of us. Yes.
I can do that.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next, we have an intergovernmental agreement between the County of Cook and the Cook County Sheriff and the City of Royal regarding the city and the Cook County 911 Center 911 system. Attorney, do you have any updates on this? New contract?
Yeah, we make a few corrections, but they'd be minor. So we'd be looking to put this on with those revisions to the next council meeting for approval.
Any questions or concerns? Alderman Carr?
I've had to call 911 a couple of times, and I have to say that compared to the old way when we had dispatch center here, it feels like it takes forever to get through to the proper phone. Because you call, and then they want to know if it's fire or police, and then they want to know where you're at. And a lot of times we put on hold more than once, and I think, my goodness, what could be happening? I mean, in my case, it wasn't like a big emergency. But it just seems like they put you on hold for a long time. And it takes them a long time to switch you to the proper person. My only comment.
Thank you. Alden?
I kind of have to concur with all of the car that I was in an incident and hit and run. And I'll be honest with you, I rather just pay Jason Slattery some more money because he got to the situation a lot faster than they did. And he was in there.
Can we figure out that was village?
The first time with the village, they didn't remember the codes that I was giving them for the tag numbers, so they forgot. And then I called Officer Slattery. That was, like I said, he was in therapy, and the guys in blue, Blue Island Finest, was there with no problem, right on the scene. So I know I kind of pinch for money, things of that nature, like before having a 911 center again. But if it's a real like life-threatening situation, that person's not gonna make it.
Yeah.
We legally can't. The state law says you have to have 25,000. So that's why we don't have it. That's the reason why, outside of money, you got that 25,000. You're all not. So we don't qualify for that. Alden?
I understand your concern, and I kind of experienced some of the same things. But one of the things we just talked about in the neighborhood watch group is that one thing you may not know, but I didn't know, is that when you get on with an actual agent and they start asking you questions, there's actually, I ran right there being mirrored by another person who's actually taking this stuff down and it's being fed right out into the system. So the police are getting it. It may feel like you're having a conversation with, why please get this information along, but it simultaneously is being moved out to the officers who need to know it. So at least on that side of it, I get the same perception about that. And it was interesting to hear that how it actually happens is actually pretty efficient. So, but I get the wait time.
Well, just to piggyback on that, in the past, I've called the Blue Island Police Department directly, and I get a faster response than 911. So that's.
So should we even pay them? So you know what I'm saying? Well, service is not that good.
It's a pass through, right? We get paid this money and then we pay it back out. So the net amount costs the city. I'm not sure, I'm going back on when I was an alderman chief. It's pass through almost, right?
Yes.
It's not, we're not paying dollars, we are, but we're getting it also at the same time. So it's a pass through fund.
Well, I would just invite more people to move to Blue Island so we can get to 25,000.
That's a whole different conversation.
I understand.
If you remember, I don't, actually, we might have been the only one when they had these conversations, when we had to eliminate 911 and 25,000 law changed. And there were certain things the city could do, and every single option was millions of dollars. Right? And we have to live in the county, like 90% of other suburbs of the county. Yeah, we're kind of stuck with this. It is a pass through, so it's not the dollar you're seeing here is we're also receiving those same dollars. I heard a lot of complaints at the beginning. I had recently at the here Alderman Carter and Alderman Pease situation. Overall, I heard it was a huge difference when we switched over. I don't know how many years it's been now, 6 years, 7 years. But the other option, I don't even know. Chief, Galcon, but that's in trouble right now too with the other issues. So population, same thing. Yeah. So we're gonna stop. Any other comments or concerns? All right, it'll be on the council agenda after the attorney reviews it again. Quick Hit Solutions, Master of Software and Service Agreement. I believe it's the housing court stuff. I think it's, who wants to mention or give a brief on this?
So currently, currently we use MSI, and what we've been experiencing is trouble with their formatting and their programming. Specifically, we're not able to carry over pictures on the citations. When it goes to housing court or ticket courts, if the photo is not attached citations being dismissed entirely. So we looked around, we spoke with other municipalities. Quicket seemed to be the most preferred option. We got in touch with them. They came out, they gave us a demo for almost the same amount of money. We are getting not only better programs, but their engineers for the programming are their customer service. So when you call in with a problem, you're having an engineer who built the program actually walk you through a solution. It's going to provide us with e-citations. Currently, right now, we still, take pen to paper to write moving violations and local ordinances and such. With the e-citation, we're just simply scanning it with tablets, and that's going to reduce the amount of time on traffic stop from about 7 minutes to 3 minutes. So it's a time saver, headache saver, and we're really excited to go for it.
Any questions?
One, not so much for the chief, but just generally. I understand that there are some issues with not having photographic evidence, but I also understand that one of our adjudicators is dismissing in a lot of cases and others are not. And I guess this will help solve that.
I know that.
I know, but I wish that this would not be going on.
Yeah, I've attended some of those hearings and without photo evidence, they're leaning on the side of dismissing without any backup. But this would solve all that, yeah. The housing, when a person comes in and says, I don't know what you're talking about, but I have my coverage around my house.
So Chief, did you say is this for all ticketing and citation that the department does, or is it strictly, code enforcement?
No, it would be IBC, local ordinance, and housing. Parking, yes, parking. Good. Incorporate it all.
Towing, snow routes,
Yes,
that's what we were trying to learn about all this.
we did. Yes, sir.
Any other Alderman questions? Thank you, Chief.
Great.
Next we have ordinance, resident only parking, the ones who wait till 0 South Francisco. Is there any objection from the Alderman?
Alderman Rowe had been request from a resident, and we talked about it a little bit today. It looked like the resident was requesting to have it only in front of his or her home. The code doesn't allow for that, so it would have to probably be the whole side of that person's block or both sides of the block. And it's right around Eisenhower, correct? There's
Yeah.
kids parking there, so.
It's part of I think, a larger conversation just around where students park and where they drive. So, this is, I guess, sort of a stopgap, though we recognize that turning the entire neighborhood into residential only parking is probably not sufficient. So I think, we'll move forward with this block, but we are looking at other ways, like using the empty student lot at Eisenhower to get kids out of the neighborhood, parking close to school. But yeah, I think if we could just do that block.
Should we do the entire block on both sides or just the side of his house?
No, probably both sides.
Alderman?
Yeah, this question for Alderman Rowe. So was it the consensus like taking, because I'm just saying like a certain amount of time, like let's say 9 a.m. to whatever, doing student parking, maybe the people going to work, whatever, maybe they retire, they need that spot as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a serious concern. I think I've heard from people who are just irritated to people who, do have medical conditions and are forced to park far away. So, yeah, I think we're treating it seriously. But I think just putting signs everywhere isn't going to cut it. Plus, too, if the students disregard that, then it's an enforcement question. So.
Alderman?
Related, just have a name to ask in regards to parking. It's not really quite on the subject, but are we still moving towards a system to renew handicap spaces on an annual basis?
I believe we did switch over.
Oh, are we doing that?
I think we did switch over to that. I just don't know if it went into the inventory. Jim was working on it, and I'm sure it's one of the things that has to be read.
Okay.
Because we did pass our ordinances, I
Right.
think, am I correct? We passed our ordinances to do that.
Yeah, I just haven't seen them yet.
But they were going to do a citywide inventory, which
Okay.
again, on a priority list of going every
I get
single
it.
block.
Yeah.
But they did start the process. I just don't know where it left off.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Next, we have an ordinance regarding Title 15, Land Use, Chapter 166, zoning, in relation to zoning of adult use cannabis, business establishments. This is already passed through planning and zoning. It makes our ordinance match the state ordinance or state law. So identical to what the state is, our different rule is. Are any questions or concerns?
Out of curiosity, I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to read through all of it. How does this differ from the change we introduced for, I think there's another smaller change we did.
That was a different quote. That was dispensary. This is not dispensary. This is an industrial area, wholesale, infusion areas, industrial zone areas of town. However, you can pick it up better than I can.
But it's exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
So regarding to your question, the community college is in the dispensary section.
Yes, but
Change.
that was before us though now.
So what's before you is more of the adult use businesses other than dispensary, which are located in the I-1, I-2 zones.
Just off the top of your head, you know, which section of code this addresses?
Well, it addresses the existing cannabis ordinance. And it deals with section 166.025. It deals with adult use cannabis establishments, specifically adult use cannabis craft growers, adult use cultivation centers, adult use dispensing organization only for the community college removal. It deals with the adult use cannabis infuser organization, adult use cannabis processing organization, and adult use cannabis transportation organization. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 out of 6. What this ordinance is doing is removing the distance requirement, letters A and B, for the 5 out of 6
For industrial zone areas, right?
for industrial zones.
So for example, the issue is every single industrial zone area of town, let's say 139th Western, there's a house on every block, even though there's one house and the whole area is industrial, that one house will not allow any of those warehouses to be for campus. I think this is where the state says it's zoned industrial, they can do that.
Right, so the idea is to have the 5 out of 6, those are kind of considered like manufacturing uses. So they're not retail, dispensing is retail, so dispensing is allowed through a special use C1, C2, UTOD, which is our commercial zones. I1, I2 is our industrial zones. Unfortunately, we have lots of houses sprinkled all around industrial properties. So there's been like 3 situations where someone has called me for a particular business, adult use business. And when we start to look at the current business requirement, or you have a house right next to you, you have a house across the street, or you have, right,
The trailer park is an issue, I think, for every address that was called for us.
yes.
One on Western 13700 Western Avenue.
Yeah, next to the former Bonner roofing building, the former one. That would be an ideal situation for some type of adult use business. But you have the mobile home north of it, you have a home south of it, and diagonally across the street, you have another home. So by removing the distance requirements, we allow for a prospective business owner who wants to do manufacture industrial related cannabis to do it, like infusers, cultivations, what have you. The dispensing one has not been touched at all, except for removing community college, which was done in the prior ordinance at the city level. This is just redealing it through planning and zoning. Besides that, the distance requirements, I was working with the land use attorney when it comes to additional requirements. Before it was like registered mail for 250 foot of butter notification. That's going to be certified because it's more, it's cheaper. Registered mail is more expensive, and with the former application we had for a dispenser, they came to our light quickly to our attention. And then section 10 of this ordinance, working with the land use attorney again, we expanded the signage and advertisement requirements, which mirrors the state requirements, but now we have it here. So for example, if I'm talking to an adult use business, I could refer to this section, especially about the type of advertising that's allowed. So again, for the 5 out of 6, we have eliminated, or we're in the proposal to eliminate the 1,000 foot distance from pre-existing uses, residential, and 250 for residential purposes. 250 and the 1,000 is one that's being removed. 250 for residential, 1,000 for what we consider private, public, nursery school, primary school, secondary school, community college, which is being eliminated, daycare, home, daycare, residential. You don't have these types of uses in an industrial zone, so it's kind of like where to have it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Norm. Thanks, Hunter. Next, we have an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Blue Island and Community High School District 218 for a cost sharing relating to resurfacing costs of the portion of Sacramento from 127th to Ivory Street. I believe this is still with their board, but it'd be a simple cost share to repave that entirety of the street between the school district and the city. I think it's win-win for both our government agencies. This will be included once passed by both the city council and District 218 Board of Education to get the street resurfaced. So, but included in this, they get to resurface their parking spaces along the streets. Can't do one without the other, and that's what the idea came from. I've met with Josh, the superintendent, 3 times, I think, already since he's been superintendent, and he's been very favorable in improving value for the city and the school district. And it was one of the things that came up while we met at Village Station up at the road bus, and how the school district is blamed for the parking spaces, we get blamed for the street when we can solve the problem. So it's still at their board, I think their legal team, but at our end, it's pretty clean cut. They pay half, and the street gets redone next season. Is there any questions?
Is there a cost specific?
It would be part of our going out to bid for next season. It would just basically say that street though, we'll build, I think it says we'll build and I remember details, either one bill or payments, they'll reimburse us our cost, 50%. Actually, I could mention that one's more real, maybe at their board or at their things. There's another one out there we will demonstrate to Jay. Similar situation with the Village of Robbins, however, we have not approached them yet. I want to let the council know. Francisco, like Alderman Johnson followed several times. It's a 1-block section that borders in the Village of Robbins, it's City of Island. It's a terrible shape. Because both cities have never come to an agreement to do it. So it's more like a gravel road right now. So it'd be the exact same type of agreement that I would send to them. They would have to approve. We'd have to approve it at city council, and we put it in next year's bid. Both streets, that one particularly is only 1 block, so it's minimal cost because you have to have an intergovernmental agreement together to do it correctly. Otherwise, we only pay half the street, and then nobody wins. This is going between the 135th and Broadway. Alderman, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so back up to E. All right. So the attorney had a comment about E.
So if you look at your packet on the ordinance, there was one recommendation the PDBA did not recommend in terms of the changes that the zoning attorney had recommended. It's on page 4 of that ordinance. I spoke further to the zoning attorney, and he didn't think it made a huge difference one way or the other. If you wanted to go with PDBA recommendation or his recommendation, he really was just putting this in here to protect the city from a lawsuit. So if you look at it, it talks about special uses in I-1. And there's an underlined portion saying any permitted or special use in the C1 or C2 commercial district, excluding any residential dwelling use, provided the approval of the planning and zoning board. Basically, what this means is that they could not view these industrial districts as residential districts. However, the PDBA didn't like the language because they felt if a resident's home in one of these districts burned down, that this would disallow the resident from rebuilding there, and they didn't find that fair. And Ryan Morton, who is the zoning attorney, he said, even if we don't put this in, he thinks we're still safe to move forward with the campus issues in the industrial district. He was just kind of putting there in it putting it in there as extra protection. So whatever you guys choose to do, follow the PDB recommendation or follow his recommendation, we'll still be able to reach that goal that we needed for the adult use cannabis in the industrial district.
I would mind, if I'm going to scenario. Follow the council things. Did adding language that
It's adding the language, but it would, if someone's house burned down in the industrial district, then they would not be able to rebuild their house.
But that's on.
It wouldn't
that's
allow
on the
rebuilding
mayor.
of
Right.
residential homes in that area. The ones that are there,
Just to replace them.
So, currently, to interject, under non-conformity, if a house is burned down or blown away, acts of God, more than 50% would have to conform to today's standards for the zone. So what the PZBA felt was if a house is burned more than 50%, it's considered under zoning, it's a new house, it has to comply with today's requirements. So if we're saying I1, I2 does not allow for residential as a standoff, and you can't rebuild it, and that was a concern that they have. So it's dealing with the non-conformity issue. About the 50% or more. So in the past, we would go through some type of review process, right? With the building department, estimates, with the insurance company to see where they are percentage wise and financially, how much it costs to rebuild a house. If, let's say, as an example, if the fire burned it. Now, in this situation, under I1, I2, the person loses their house, they're able to rebuild it and keep it. What this ordinance is saying is we're not allowing for new homes to be built.
But as President said, it might never have been written down. There's houses that burn on Chatham Street that we just sold the lots to recently to the corporation next door. The city didn't grant building permits to those houses when they did burn. Because they said it's an industrial area.
Right.
That was never in the code, though, you're saying?
Well, how you call it, the city building department is following the zoning. This came up because of the cannabis.
So now we're opening it up as we open up the chapter.
Because under the land use, this is what the land use attorney said, gets really sticky on a legal perspective about residential and cannabis business, adult use, other than dispensary. So what the attorney wanted to say is we kind of want for any new houses to be built. The ones that are there, they're grandfathered.
That's kind of what the city's always been acting.
Right, so the understanding is you live in an industrial zone, so you might have a brewery next to you, or adult use cannabis, or a cabinet maker across the street from you. You live in an industrial zone, so you can't complain and say, well, you know, because of safety and welfare, residential standards to be applied throughout the zone.
So to recap, I mean, what's at issue is just whether or not we add explicit language to provide for that exception. I mean, there's no drawback to that, right?
I don't see drawback. We're just protecting the city, right?
Yeah. Well, and
CBA
let's-
didn't want to do it because they felt that it was unfair to residents whose home may burn in the industrial district and they couldn't rebuild there.
Well,
So
Right.
the attorney recommends that we put this
Yeah.
language in.
And they're not attorneys, they're a recommendation only. I think we can protect the city.
Yes, you guys make the ultimate decision,
If
so.
that property then burns, and, you know, it was vacant, and then.
No tax dollars.
Well, it's like those houses that we're gonna tear down and the corporation next door is gonna build on.
I don't think anybody's saying we just leave it after it burns. It's just whether or not we need to provide the legal language to make an exception, right? Or are we just resting on precedent? Is that, what's that issue?
Right, there's nothing in the language right now, so this would
Right.
exclude new residential in the industrial district. And if someone's residential burned more than 50%, they could not rebuild.
How many houses would that come in?
I mean, it's taking another house.
Thinking in South 135th, there might be only under 30 houses in the entire city outside of the village.
I know, I'm sure it's not a large number, but I don't think anybody wants to be taken from them to burn down. I mean, they're not gonna go to screw, right?
You still get the insurance. It's like no different than if a house burns in a lot that's less than 38.5 feet. 37.5 feet, what's the code? They didn't allow to rebuild, they haven't been allowed to rebuild.
So they would get, so they would get the insurance, the insurance money.
Right, so the
You
37,
can't build better, you build somewhere else.
right, the 37.5 is the width of the lot, is what the mayor's.
And you have houses in town with, I know there was one in one strike, they couldn't rebuild the house.
Right,
Yes.
The remedy is to go through the variance process. Because through the variance process, you can rebuild on a lot that's lot width deficient or lot area deficient. And I just had a conversation with a realtor about a lot that's empty, about that situation. Can a new house be built? I'm like, well, if you go through the variance process, under that variance requirement, you could do both lot area and lot width. 37.5, we get a lot of lots that are 33, sometimes 31. But those are the weird little lots. You're usually next to another lot that's occupied by the same property owner. So what happens here, especially in Illinois, you could own two properties. If you're the property owner, and you can put a house on one pin, you can put, let's say, a detached garage in the next one. As two separate properties. In other states, you have to merge the lots together because of accounting purposes for taxes. You pay more taxes when you pin with the house versus the one with the detached garage. So now comes the question, can I develop my lot? Yes, you can, but you have to go through a variance process and remove the ancillary objects that's on it. It's like a
So with this language, however, can they still go through the variance process?
Well, yeah, worst case scenario, the person goes through the special use. Special use for.
So it's still an avenue. Okay, then it should be, we're still giving them an avenue, and still would have to be a special use.
The idea is to curtail people purchasing the lot, I want to build a new house, I'm going through a special use to put a new house. That's what we're trying to say.
Okay.
So the findings of fact changed. This is why I'm back up here again, it's just to go over it because it was an issue about non-conformities to existing homeowners.
By the end of the day, you're saying we can go for special use.
Or the existing.
So I got like one, like the city with my.
Yeah, I just need to know what the city council wants to do.
Okay.
Because if you guys are the ultimate
Is there any
decision.
issue with this? No.
No.
Thank you, Howard. Anything else?
No.
Okay, next we have a discussion regarding waste management contract. We all received the updated best offer from our current provider. I don't know who wants to take a lead on this. I can, but go ahead.
Tom Williams, City Administrator. So our current waste management contract will expire at the end of October, which means we are rapidly approaching the decision-making point for this body in terms of what we want to do moving forward. So there are two major questions that the administration is looking for some general guidance or desire out of which direction we want to head here. The first and most obvious question, and I know we've had a lot of conversations about this, but the first and most obvious question is: do we enter into an engagement with our existing provider, which is Shore Recycling Services? And that's what this outline in front of you is going to talk about. I'll go into that in more detail. And if we choose not to do that, would the choice be then to go to an RFP process? I think based on my conversations in a different world, the RFP probably might have been a no-brainer for this body in terms of just let's go out and look to market and see what we get. But the current situation as it is, especially as it relates to staffing, labor costs, fuel costs, et cetera, leave us with what I would call a bird in the hand argument, which is to say there's this offer that we know on paper here, right, or at least it was we drill down to it. But if we choose not to do that, then we go essentially kind of mystery boxes where we go to an RFP, we'll get our proposals. I imagine they sure would submit one. I imagine other companies would too. But there is a chance, and I would, in my opinion, say a decent chance that those numbers, all of those proposals, could come back higher than what we're looking at now. So when I say bird in the hand argument, we know what we're dealing with here. We go to an RFP, it creates a great deal of uncertainty. It's not likely to come back cheaper, I would think. So, but those are the options. So that's the first big question we're going to deal with here is: do we want to continue down the road of fine-tuning the proposal that's in front of you, or do we want to go to an RFP? So that's question one. Question two within that would be, and this would apply no matter what the answer to question one is. Question two would be deals with more what we want to see in terms of our waste management services. So what you have in the main cost differential, there, the main thing that's going to make the difference in terms of what it costs is going to be if we continue with the current practice of the city handling all of its bulk pickup, big and small, or if we begin to push some of the bulk responsibilities off of our public works department, we'll talk a little more about that, but put those within our garbage contract. So there's pros and cons to both of these approaches. The pros obviously would be we're taking a very time-consuming program off of our public works department and putting more of our public works workers to where we want them to be, which is doing work orders, filling the needs of your residents, et cetera, et cetera. A con would obviously be, as you see before you, that it would come with an increased cost. Okay, so I want to walk through with those two concepts. So again, just back here real quick. Question one, Lake Shore proposal or RFP. Question two, do we want to include bulk in this, or do we want to keep going with what our status quo has been, which is only garbage and recycling?
Can we address those in the reverse order? I think
I
there's a strategic issue, which is going to be the bulk pickup, and then the tactical issue, who we pick to follow what we choose.
Fair enough. Okay. So with that in mind, do we want to walk through these numbers now, or do we want to do a lot of questions now, or how do you want to?
I think we start at a high level, and I just like to add that this box below was an attempt to roughly characterize what the city is spending now to basically have employees spend all of their time at Public Works doing bulk pickup. So it's not only a cost that the city incurs, but then that's labor that's not being put towards other higher priority things. So this option number 2 is not only a proposal to perhaps save us money, but also allocate our limited labor supply to other things.
It's the only reasonable option. But
I agree.
my concern is, for one, I think we talked about doing our RFP for this earlier in the year. If in fact we did, are you saying that Lake Shore's numbers would change?
I'm saying that's definitely possible. Right now, it's within Lake Shore's interest to try to just keep a client without having to go through the process. So they're trying to give us the best deal that we can. As far as waste management companies are concerned, and again, I'm rolling out right in this conversation, what I'm about to say isn't our problem. But as far as garbage, what waste management companies are concerned, from what I understand, municipal contracts are not. They're most lucrative, they're most money making. So I would guess that I wouldn't assume, Alderman, to get to the heart of your question, I would not assume that this proposal right now is for a contract extension. I would not assume that all of these numbers stick in a regular proposal.
This is an extension. We're not talking about doing a company. That's why I've met with them several times. The numbers have come within $2 of the difference between what we're currently paying. I called our 2 neighboring towns. They're paying a lot more than that, $19.89 without bulk.
You know when their contracts went into effect?
Recent Robin just took over a new contract with Flood Brothers. I think he's 20 or 22 without bulk.
Okay.
With Flood Brothers over there. They're a brand new contract. It's only one bulk. Yeah. So again, like we went with the RFP, we did a straw poll. It was 5 to 2, not do RFP, but to do negotiations. Otherwise, I wouldn't waste my time over these meetings. And a past meeting, I forgot how many months ago it was. Again, now we're kind of like, we're at the point we got to make a decision. Are we going to stay with Lake Shore or we do the RFP? If we do an RFP and they give a 30-day, I have to do it tomorrow. And then we don't know what we're going to have. We're stuck with whatever we have when the RFP comes in. So that's where the reality we're at.
So I'm just, cut to the chase because I got a chance to think about this and look at it. I do personally think we should probably stick with Lake Shore. And I think we should go with the bulk pickup. To me, just a crystal clear example of why this is so beneficial to us is, so if we stick with Lake Shore and the single family home cost goes up $4.27 a month, it's a $51 a year increase. It's not a lot of money. It's money, but it's not a lot of money. What we get out of that is 4 workers 5 days a week moved away from doing this to other things. And the thing that really just kind of really sticks out to me is as you're going to talk next about the forestry board, as I've been learning more and more about the state of our tree canopy, from Val, talking to the forestry board, and talking recently with Phil Bretz, our acting guy, there's just crying needs. We're way behind on this condition of tree canopy, and it wouldn't be the only thing these persons would be dispatched to do. But right now, we're kind of hopelessly behind, and this would, be one thing that we could do that would really be beneficial. So it seems to me, it's pretty good right now.
Yes, I got a couple of questions. I was looking further down the list where it's saying for one item or two items not to exceed 50 pounds. So if the person put a love seat out there, they own. Another question is public works employees. How many do we right now have fully staffed? I know we're not fully staffed. What would that number be like?
Off the top of my head, I mean, what you're addressing, the real number, I mean, I think it's 19. Yeah, so I think it's 18 right now, so I think 19 for the gym. So I think if my immediate recollection is we have 18 public workshop employees right now. I'll double check that, but I'm not far off from off. As far as an ideal staffing number, just give you some historical context. At the height of the local administration, there were 42 public works. Now, I would call that excessive.
Right.
When Ervolato took over, there were 15. I would call that excessive in the other direction. So the answer is probably between those two numbers. I won't give you the exact number because honestly, to your point, Alderman, the work is legion. We could even staff a team of 100 for a couple of years.
I got the actual numbers and we're way below that. So I
Right.
was talking laborers and truck drivers. Okay. Got two water operators that are strictly water. They're not picking up garbage unless there's an emergency. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 drivers and laborers. And you got 3 mechanics. That's between the police department, fire department. Everybody uses mechanics.
So they're a lot of sites.
So you got, what did I say, 13? You have 13, 14. So you're at 14. So the number's less than
Yeah. So then we are,
And four of them,
like everyone else.
well,
And well, they got 4 of them picking up all, but we're going to talk about water meters here later in this meeting. But we're trying to tackle the two biggest time consuming programs within the works.
Good. Reason why I'm just saying is that I know when Jim was there, how we worked with it. He had to have somebody drive a truck. If it was less than 10,000 pounds, we need a CDL. So therefore, like the least experienced people, you would put your water guys out there and people of that nature, but it might be newcomers who need to know, one, learn to see. But just getting to the point I wanted to really make is that I like the vote system personally. I think it's part of what makes us uniquely different from everybody else. Second of all, I'm looking at there's no difference between a single, that's a H is what, single family house,
Single family house.
and then a senior citizen. That should be a difference. That should be definitely different. Even if it was up to me, I wouldn't even have pets included with the senior citizen. But it's not up just to me. But if there's no difference in a single family person home, versus I can go put in some overtime versus a senior citizen can't. So these numbers need to change.
Alderman, just remember that it costs us. The issue with Diagram has to be tackled. Whatever we decide today, we agree on, then we have our orders. We charge more than these amounts. And the senior rate is passed through cost. Single family goes up to 29 dollars.
Because the only thing I'm saying, Chief, I don't mind, dealing with these people, instead of, since we already started this conversation from the last, because I think I was the only one that wanted to send out. I think the thing being gave us.
So it's 5 to 7, I put the number.
Right. So I'm willing to work with these people, but I think it needs to be some changes. That bulk item for 50 pounds, bro. That's nothing. The 2 items.
Now, when I asked Jim, and I believe Phil, I would say, Phil said the same thing. Majority of the calls we pick up is that one chair, that one fan, that one, whatever.
Mattresses, lots of mattresses.
Yeah.
Right. Which is more
That's
than 50
90%
pounds.
of what we're sending people out driving around picking up.
Right.
And we still need to pick up bulk.
Yeah.
Outside of it.
we will.
So we're not eliminating completely all the bulk. We might switch over to a work order system. So instead of driving around, wasting diesel and hours, Okay, Alderman Johnson, you said, this person on the front down the block, they have three mattresses out there. Can you send a truck to pick it up, or the owner is supposed to do that? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay, we'll work order, they'll be there tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll still have to do it.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're gonna have to put the slide up and it's gonna be picked up. I think.
And just piggyback on that, real quick, by jumping. So we have, I agree with you that there are many elements of bulk pickup in terms of customer service that has value, and we want to try to retain that as best we can. We love it. It has, generosity has led to a bit of a problem that this council inherits, this administration inherits. We have fly dumping going on a pretty regular basis, right? So it really is all of this, and all of the Montoya's not here, but they have a problem. His word as well about it. Right now, it's very difficult for us to enforce and hone in on that because the fly dumping, the large dumps, the 10 mattresses, 5 posts, and all this stuff posted out there just kind of gets absorbed into the regular work product of the public works department anyway. So the guys just go do it, right? There's no real process for, hey, why is this the third time this month that we've been in this house with 10 mattresses, right? Because people are dumping from other towns. What this bulk system would do, if we decide to choose to go that way, is it takes our public work guys off of the day-to-day driving around of individual bulk items. Now we kind of drain that swamp, as it were, right? Now what's going to remain for the city's responsibility is going to be these large dump situations. We're going to be incorporating that into a work order system that will allow us to track it better and to isolate these individual properties where we can say realistically, there's no reason you should have had 4 calls for large dump removal in 1 month, right? What's going on here? And then we can issue citations knowing that we're backed up. Then we can find evidence. Then we can actually enforce these rules a little bit better. And this is going to be a process, but everyone knows once the word gets out, hey, you can dump in Blue Island and no one's going to do anything about it. It's going to take some people getting hauled into court with tickets. It's going to take some people having to call their cousin and say you can't dump your apartment stuff here anymore. All that stuff is going to have to happen over a year or 2 process. So we see this as, and I say that only to say it has operational value. I think the biggest operational value is when we sell about freeing up public works workers to do public works. But it also has some significant operational value in terms of us being able to isolate and better enforce. Because right now we're dumping other towns and other landlords and we're dumping their stuff. And it's our guys and our money that's going
I'll bring attention to this one line here. The city, Mark pulled up the last couple of years. On average, we spend about $200,000 a year on the roll-ups. We mentioned this before. It's where we dump our stuff. After all these other costs on the table, we're still paying the $200,000 to pull it from our public works check on top of these figures. So there's a backdoor, a lot of savings.
we do see double saving with the roll-offs.
All in a row.
I just want to say too, it lets us change our posture from being reactive to being proactive, right? If you know in advance how many bulk pickups you have the next day, you can allocate your workforce accordingly instead of being reactive to a bunch of calls coming in and scrambling to find, who can close that gap. I think that has a big, a net gain in efficiency and savings too, to be able to institute that system. And then the last thing I just want to touch on, and members of the administration, you guys can throw something on if I'm speaking out of turn, but the mayor mentioned that, for non-seniors, we have a surcharge that we add to help defray the cost of, among other things, running our bulk pickup. What this would allow us to do, though, is if we consider one of these options, we can use that instead to blunt or defray any cost increase, right? Because we're pulling back our involvement doing bulk pickup. We'll still have to do some, but probably not enough to justify the full surcharge. So we could essentially leave that cap in place. We're getting charged more by whoever we pick, but we're still maybe passing out the same amount of cost or a blunted amount to the residents if we wanted to phase in a cost increase.
It would be on committee of the whole in October. We would have to discuss the ordinance. Because once you give a direction to make a contract with the utility with Lakeshore, with the bulk, you guys pass that, then we've got to pass an ordinance, what we're going to charge for that. So it's like a 2-part system. That's another whole committee.
And hopefully we'll have better numbers in time too. As to
Right. And then too, it's a way for them to also make money too with recyclables, about solid waste and things of that nature. But like I was saying, I like that you do listening to doing that. We need to definitely bump up our public works staff. But I was wondering, is there such a thing that we could create? Because I know we did it for like bulk pickup. We had so many cubic feet that it was over. I know that probably changed since we going on now, the phone call type, or looking towards that. But, what about a bounty for like cats, people who live, like you go dump, I got tires,
Well, it's on my agenda, it's the next one.
like, I take a picture of Josh dumping 50 tires in my area, you know what I'm saying? Get his tag number and all of that. Yeah. Because if it is if it happens, if a fire happens with tires, it takes quite a deal to put that out. I think the chief can attest to that. So that's a serious issue.
All the time I get twice on number I on here.
Okay, then I'm okay with this. We can try to, if you guys are, we can study this a little more. If we have to make some things, instead of sending it out. If they want to change, if they want to play ball.
The only way these numbers will change would be lower. I'm not bringing nothing back that's higher. That's what else was their last offer. So we got two questions. I think I got answers to the questions. So we'll direct the attorney then to put a contract together with these numbers are better. We very talk a lot, but it's going to figure it out. Then it'll come back to council, right?
With both.
The fall, it sounds like. Is that what everybody's leaning on? Yeah. All right.
Really quickly, excuse my ignorance of it, for the larger, buildings, do we have some kind of ordinance already in place for?
You mean like a large commercial apartment? Yeah, they're responsible for their own. They're not there. Yeah, so anything over a 3 flat, you pay for your own.
And just that I pulled the prices, because I actually don't have anything that's more than 4 units. So I asked the landlord that I was friendly with that has 4 unit, a 6 unit, a 10 unit. And for the 6 unit, they were paying $160 a month for those 2-yard dumpsters. So we're still looking at that compared to the commercial rate outside of our contract. Any other questions about waste? Now we have an equally long conversation about littering, but we can tie in by who else in our patient, so we'll go to pre-ordinance.
And then over the next couple weeks, we're looking through this, if you want, because we've been working, this one page is the product of a whole lot of
meetings.
A lot of back envelope math and playing with spreadsheets and figuring out what's best. So if you have any questions about how we arrived at any of these, how does any of these be affected, residents moving forward, etc., both Mark and I are available to answer those questions over the next couple of weeks.
Can you just send me the raw numbers that they gave you in whatever format?
And I don't know what you mentioned, we included the yard waste stuff, the stuff that council wanted the first round, it's all included in these prices regardless. All right, next we have, forestry board pre-ordinance. I don't know.
Sure, I think you guys each packet. And it is what is chapter 98, that's what our code currently has regards to tree. The other attachment is the ordinance template sent by BAL, but recommended by Chicago Region Trees Initiative, who is the group we are seeking to obtain a grant from. And to get the grants to help with our tree canopy, we need certain things within our code for them to even consider us for the grant. I have certain concerns just from a legal perspective about the inclusivity of all of what is recommended by the Chicago Region Tree Initiative into the code itself. I would prefer to see whatever's required, absolutely required, added to our code, and then a policy adopted by the Bale's group, I can't think of the forestry board, that incorporated a lot of the goals and ideas that are in the Chicago Regional Tree Initiative, but not requiring or tying to some of these issues. So I just have you would think, Josh.
I was just going to ask if you could give an example.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So if you look at the first page, the sample ordinance, it says ground level ordinance template on top. Obviously, that first page would not be included. The second page, statement of purpose. I think our statement of purpose in 98.002 is similar. So I would, keep what's in ours, maybe add a little bit to ours. The next page, page 3 of the ground level ordinance template, I would not include in our code. It's basically goals and policies as to what this group is going to try to achieve in the future. And Dale, you can speak to this as well, but it didn't seem to me that every single piece of their ordinance recommendation would be required to be in our code to get the grant. It was just certain aspects of it. And they provided some examples for us too. So I'll get to that in a second. But page 4, it's a bunch of definitions. I would add the ones that are, missing from our code into our code if they were applicable. There's certain things that concern me, like the definition of damage from a legal perspective. I wouldn't want that defined in the code. A landscape management plan, landscaping professional, some of legacy trees. I don't know if those are defined elsewhere or what type of legacy trees would be considered a legacy tree. Tree permits are written authorizations. I don't know if we have any type of program like that in place in the city right now. And to require some type of permitting program might require more steps on our part, or the city's part, to actually get a process like that moving. Again, page 8, preservation. This to me also is a policy, not a code. It talks about setting a goal to have 2 internal staff to become certified arborists. But until such time as the goal is achieved, the governmental entity, which would be the city, would contract with a certified arborist to provide direction and oversight of urban forestry practices within the city for the proper care and management of the urban forest. This requires costs, approvals, appropriations, etc. So I don't know if we're quite there yet. Again, page 10, it talks about the planting of trees and tree care. Again, I think this could be in a policy. However, I do know that there's certain removal requirements or fines that would have to be included in the ordinance that we don't have right now in order to get the grant. And they provided examples from other municipalities that we could definitely incorporate into our tree ordinance that don't concern me as much as kind of the policy issues in their recommended ordinance. And I understand, of course, why they're recommending all of these things, or, their whole goal is to improve the tree canopies and help the municipalities and things like that. But putting this into our legal code does concern me. And so those are some of the examples. Again, it's a 22-page ordinance here. And so if you read through it in its entirety, you would see some of my concerns, I believe. Page 11 talks about the standard of care that the city would be responsible for in terms of the tree. We do have, not that I know anything about trees though, all I know is that on, I would say a consistent basis, we receive claims for property damage from trees that have fallen down. And the only way that I can deny those claims at maturity is if I can show that the city did not know that the tree was damaged. And a lot of the times we don't know that the tree was damaged, so I do deny those claims. So to define damage, how to care for trees and things like that is going to significantly also impact probably these property damage claims and the amount of money that we're going to have to spend on them that we're not currently spending.
Thank you. This has been very thoughtful comments. I think so. Just on the damage issue, we will, in fact, through the tree canopy survey we're going to do, we will determine that issue. But are you saying that you prefer not to have this be a part of our ordinance?
I think it's policy. We have to have like 2 documents.
Right, I got you.
And not in our strict statute of code, maybe it's policy.
Right.
So yeah, in my mind, the forestry board is going to be, an entity that's going to be helpful in doing the tree canopy and things like that. they're gonna need some kind of policy in place for how they're going to run their board or their program. I don't know if eventually they'll be permitting people for planting or removal, or if that's gonna be something that comes from the city. But it's a much bigger program. I think that we are capable of implementing right now
Right.
within our code. And I understand that the mapping is going to tell us the damaged trees, so it's going to increase our liability. But
I was just gonna ask, is it fair to believe then that your concern is that, we cannot adopt this for back and all at once necessarily, but could we also perhaps say that this provides a rubric for the forestry board to follow to help inform the council as to how we might, over time or by piecemeal, get something workable and close to this?
yes, and I don't know if it's gonna be in the code, it's going to be close to it, because there's so much policy. But I think what's required in the code, fines for damaging trees, removing trees, permits for planting trees, what kind of trees you should use, all that stuff can be codified eventually.
Right.
It's just, we really have to think about who's gonna be in charge of that process. And once we figure that out, it's gonna be, okay, now what's the process? Now that we know who's gonna be responsible for it.
Do we have,
Like the sport has them, they have their own requirements.
I had a question for Val too, in a second.
Yeah,
So just real quick, do we know if we have, other practical examples of cities other than Chicago that have managed to successfully put this in place and apply for these grants?
So, the ordinance that, or the ordinance that has been presented and has been, drafted from, the Forest Preserve, or from the Forest Preserve, from, the Blue Island Forestry Board has, been reviewed by our forestry members. It was also, this document is what most of the newer, ordinance, what other cities have been enacting, Glenview, Homewood, several other cities have enacted, this, ordinance.
Do you know what's
Or
outside?
an outline of it.
Okay, so-
But that's
It
what I
has
meant,
been-
I want.
It has been reviewed, by, CRTI. The only thing that was missing from this that they would like to see in it is the liability, the enforcement, how it would be enforced, et cetera.
So
They,
let me
and
just
it's
comment
finished.
out. If we can put what's needed in there now, it's one step better than holding off on doing nothing until we're in place to do everything.
Well, I would rather see it be complete and usable and a workable document and have the requirements for moving forward. The last document, what we're working with now that Aaron is referencing is from 1994, and I'm in it. It talks about having a forest manager, which the city.
that's gonna have to be stricken, but when we amend the ordinance, we, and add what we need to add from.
We
your
need to add
policy.
part of this and
Objection.
the forestry board reviewed the document that is on record right now. It's so passe that it makes sense for moving forward, especially when you're not really tweaking ordinances every couple of years. I mean, it's been over 30 years for this ordinance to get revised, and it needs to be revised. And it was passe in 2000 when the forestry board.
Well, I think that's what we're saying. She wants to revise it, but we can't take everything that's in this.
I think you're better off starting anew, starting fresh with an ordinance that has been reviewed by other cities, by our regional experts in tree care.
That's fair, right?
We're saying two different things. I think we're not hearing each other. It's gonna be a new ordinance. It's gonna incorporate a lot of this language, but it can't incorporate all the language.
It should incorporate, I would like to see what it does, and I would like to see where you plan on making the cuts, because it is important for our city to be more proactive and to have a workable, enforceable tree ordinance. Because what's been happening in the past 35 years just isn't gonna work for this generation.
Alderman,
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And as an example, though, I think the stipulation for 2 arborists, for example,
Maybe that's not necessary, but having a certified arborist.
Of
is
course.
important.
But regardless of the particulars, I think what I would like to understand is what parts are mutable and which parts are immutable, right? So we can say we need an arborist, but if they say, well, you need two to apply, that's I guess what I'm lacking the understanding of is what parts are able to be fit for us and what parts have to be adopted also.
So on there, it says if you do not have, if the city cannot, for whatever reason, have a certified arborist or two arborists. And ideally, they're saying for our population, two arborists would be ideal.
Sure.
Okay. And that's a certification. That's
Mhm.
having Philip or a couple people on, in public works, go for a professional certification. I mean, that's a reasonable request.
No, absolutely. And again, particulars aside, I'm just wondering if, you know, in
If
your.
it doesn't happen, there is a stipulation saying that it would go to the public work.
Okay, so if there's no stipulation in the document, is it fair to assume then that it has to be adopted as is in order to be eligible for these grants?
So for this grant, by the end of this grant, provided that we are awarded it, possibility, it's by the end of this grant that this ordinance has to be approved by our city, of course, and made to work for our city. And then it is also needs to be approved and with a tree preservation. So we do need to have that stipulation. Normally in past years when this grant has been offered to cities, you had to have a ordinance revised within the past, 3 to 5 years or something. This year they opened up saying you don't have to have that ordinance approved until July of 24, which is grateful for, because you can really make this a living document. And at the same time, we will be able to apply for this, have those grants, and be serious and intentional with our landscape moving forward, because it is just as important as the roads and sewers and everything that the landscape of the city.
I think that that's a key point, because until recently, I think we, or at least I had thought that we had to have this ordinance enacted like now, more or less. I wouldn't want to say let's just put it off, because we shouldn't, but I think that hearing the couple of different viewpoints here, it seems like with the time that we have available, we can carefully go through this and kind of section by section, make the adjustments that need to be made. And I appreciate the things you're saying, and certainly some of it makes sense, because I can see where certain matters of policy could be handled through the forestry board, not necessarily having to be in the ordinance if they were somehow burdensome to the city in that way. So I think those are things that we need to look at. I think we have time to do that, and we should just proceed to do that. No, I understand that.
Regarding like, as far as, that was something that was brought up at the last, council, was, when we are having these having complete tree inventory for the property. That, one thing that they will do is only if it is a very high risk, will they then do the, risk assessment, so that the city can still plead, but if it is high risk tree, then it should be removed.
And to me, I consider it cost. It's not about,
I mean, it's.
if the tree is damaged, it's damaged, if we know about it, when we have to pay for it. But where are we gonna come up with the extra money that is going to be paid out? Where do we come up with the money for the arborist? Where do we come up with the money for X, Y, and Z? There's just certain things that need to be like procedurally thought through, I think, a little bit.
Right, and that was the things, when I had Zach, review the ordinance, and he just went through it, last month or 2 months ago. He said we were 95% there as far as having that ordinance. It isn't, and that's on the document. What needed to be looked at were the liabilities, the cost, the enforcement, And I think that's all what this board needs to take a look at.
Just to hear you
It needs to
correctly,
be a
Val,
work in progress.
The 30-year-old document needs those quadrants minimally. Is that what you're saying?
So this, this 30 some odd, yeah, this would be, there's minimal information on there.
I mean, what we have on the books currently is what you mean by the 30
Yes.
document.
I
What do you
don't
want
even
on
know
the
what
books
it is anymore.
The person that you're talking about having reviewed the ordinance, the ordinance that his group recommended, right, the Chicago Tree Initiative.
He's the lead on for Chicago.
He did not review the Blue Island code.
Oh,
He did not, he reviewed the proposed.
The
Proposed code.
oh, okay.
He reviewed what was, the proposed one, yes, and, he said that was what was missing.
So, yeah, and I don't think this is, I think that this is not gonna be a simple process, is what it comes down to, and it's an important, it's worth spending the time, it's very important. And I have had some time, with the new proposed ordinance to see that, there's a lot of valuable policy things and a lot of valuable legal, requirements in there that we would want to look at carefully. I think the good news is while I agree we don't want to just take forever on this, I was a little concerned. This is a lot to swallow in a month. We can't do it. But in several months, we can work.
What I'd like to do, and I think the council is in agreement, we create a new ordinance. And then we're going to start building pieces that might not be applicable to us, and pieces that liability with the attorney's concerned. We're going to have to go through this new document page by page. So it's not this document, it's not this document. We'll put a new document together using the language from the documents. And we're going to have to go through the 20, 30 pages ourselves one by one.
I would appreciate that, which is why I was here last month to say, let's get going on it. And, but I would prefer it to be, and I think what this document that's 30 years old did not work for 2 years after it was. So please look for what you want for the future, because it's not. It may be standing for Blue Island for the next 35 years.
So you mentioned a
I feel
couple
that it
towns,
needs
that's
to
the
be
first
forward.
place. We're gonna pull another town's ordinance. So you can
Yeah.
say Homewood, we'll pull Homewoods and start looking at it and see what we can. word it to
I
make
mean,
it better.
we looked at a few of them.
Homewoods, Homewoods, go for the moment. Okay. All right, Alderman.
Is it the Chicago Region Freeze Initiative? Is that the board that ultimately determines our eligibility?
Yes.
Okay.
They advise, they are the ones that administer this grant from natural resources.
Okay. It'd be nice to understand if there's a sort of, I guess what in my business would call minimally viable product, which would be the architecture necessary to sort of check all the boxes. And I think if we can establish what that is.
So
then
they're document this.
Yeah.
And with this grant, they are asking that all ordinance, why they opened it up, and it wasn't mandatory to have an ordinance, the recent ordinance on file was because they want all ordinances to have a tree preservation stipulation. And
We have the document of what the grant needs.
yeah. And I sent the revision.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, littering fees. I brought this up, I know that goes to connection with, Alderman Johnson was mentioning. I know our fee structure on littering, finding people throwing garbage through their window as they're driving by needs to be revamped. I don't think they're revamped yet, just throw it on the agenda and break it up, that's not somebody throw something out the window. It's $50. I think it's $50 to take it for. It's billing. So I'd like the grant to increase those fines for littering and fly dumping and bring it to the next, even to the next committee of the whole. It's not like nothing has to happen. I'd like to let's look at that and decide if we need to increase it or not, and then the police can. It's not so much of a just like a party ticket. Any Questions or concerns or add-ons? Alder?
I agree 100%. And my only, skepticism is that, how often I'm gonna catch something doing that. So is there, I don't know whether there's other things that we could be thinking, I don't know.
It always comes up.
How do you catch somebody doing this? That's the question.
It does happen.
The fine is still independent.
Yes.
It does happen.
Yeah.
So Joe called the guy on the stuff, when he took a picture of it, he said he didn't get it, you know, my tag.
Jim found people every once in a while in front of driving stuff, flying up in our parkway.
Right.
It's something that would keep more than just pictures off.
I
I was,
vacant homes too, like some of the homes, like in my area, it was down in the bushes. Home of this on 139th that was fixing up. And every week he's pushing all kind of crap. But I got the, what is that, the boys reserve right there. And plus those, trailer homes on 138 right there. And they just taking stuff and throwing it, man. You got a whole living room set. You can just sit out there and watch TV and everything. They got everything. Tires. The mayor of Poland actually helped him a couple years ago. I forgot how many tires that was up under the cable grid. You know, so
Sorry to be a little cynical about things, but, again, if somebody throws something out the window or, they're bagging McDonald's or whatever, I mean, that's disgusting, but, again, it comes down to the enforcement of it, and catching them in the act.
I know, I
You know,
asked,
and having somebody that would say, I saw that person throw it out.
well, it's
most people.
police actually do pull people over when they see something they throw out of a car. I've seen it happen. So it'd be nice to give them a little bit of.
Which is true, and I'm all for raising them, as high as possible.
I was coming out watching.
But, again, yeah, I mean, I've driven down Western and seen public urination while, just driving, and, our police cannot be everywhere.
No,
All the time, no.
I was driving on a couple of years ago in car. I was looking at the car behind me. Just saw the big box right up the window. And so I got out of the car, to the stoplight. And I went back and I grabbed the box and started yelling at him. He takes on. Well, the box had an address on it in Blue Island. So I went over with the box. And I couldn't get him, of course, but I put a nasty note on it. Probably not the best thing. I'm not recommending that. Of course,
Chief, what is it, $50? $50.
Yeah.
And it probably has been raised since 1965.
I think we need to register.
Yeah, I agree.
No, well, I want the chief to bring me some recommendations, bring me some other items that I'm not, that you probably need to be addressed. So can you review, when you can, non-speeding moving violation, fine structure? So the stuff that and here's the thing with these tickets, it's non-speeding, that's all Blue Island money. You catch somebody, the speeding where you're tied that out. All right, so moving on, we'll talk about Robbins. Fire station 2 was there was asphalting, paving project, and went right above the minimum bid requirements. Not sure if we're doing this right now, we next season. The administration have made a consensus vote on it.
We're waiting to see what happens tonight.
All right, so the fire station 2 has never been paved, and it's a gravel alley on the back. The fire chief wants to talk about it.
Yeah, sure. It's behind your 52 on the east side. It has never been paved since 1962. It's just difficult to keep it clear of like snow removal and stuff with like snow loaders and stuff. It takes up cars, and you got to push the snow towards the apartments that are on each side of the parking lot. So we're going to get it paved. They have to move about six dump trucks full of stone that's going to go to the Park. Talked to Park District about it already. And that's pretty much it.
What the quotes we're getting were what was the lowest bid came in? We actually did a bid and did open.
Yeah.
What's the lowest bid?
Yeah, it came in at about $26,000.
So it's a lot. It's not 100,000. So just council, we pay them something that's never been paid? I just want to make sure you guys knew it was a bid.
Right, I think so, because it hadn't been paid since we got
Never been paid.
an automatic raise by the same year.
So
I agree.
But it's because I went out to bid, I wanted the council, because we did went out to bid, there was what, 3-4 bidders on it. So and the lowest bidder is qualified.
It's qualified.
It's within this year's budget?
It's in what's that?
Does it fit within this year's budget or is it something you have to?
I believe it's a tip, but we were gonna need a tip or street service now.
Okay.
So there should be funds, one or the other. All right, any questions? Thank you. And my announcement I talked about last night. City clerk? We're meeting at the houses. That might be the next city council.
We're gonna have to do that next week.
I think it's 26th, if that's the number.
It's to review city chair board, it's gonna be up and running by the end of this week. Choosing the date for October for health fair, we're growing, we have farmers, network for providing farmers market, over 17 vendors. The scarecrows, I will call you all to get your confirmation on your scarecrow building. Eagles is having Eagles Fest this Saturday from 2 to 7. Art Alliance is having a concert on the porch, September 24th at 6:30, or between 5:30 and 9, sorry. 12738 Greenwood, and also Eagles is having a Buffalo night, September 27th.
Thank you. Next, we have water meter project. Who's up? Another possible savings in labor and public works.
Yeah, so, I think most of the council was present when we initially brought this idea up, and I brought some of the sample equipment that we use. So, what you have toward the back of your packet are two separate quotes from Core and Main. Core and Main is our current vendor for water meters, equipment that goes with our water meters. So what I asked them to do, what we asked them to do was to put together what a overhaul of our water meters to the automated system that we discussed would look like as a totality of the project, and what it would look like if we were to face it. Okay, so page 1 that you have here is what a phase would look like, basically what a first phase would look like. And so that comes in around 172,000. So the bulk cost here is, if you look at the smart points, the smart points are that white box I brought here that would actually affix to the meter, that would actually be the read of it. So this prices out for 1,000 of them, which would basically be the first route of our water meter reading system. And then the rest of the costs after that will remain static from one to the next. So the command center, the basically the reader you have fixed to the truck, and then some other hardware costs out of that. So that would be what one phase would look like. Okay, page 2, much longer invoice would be if we decided to do the entire city in one pass. So this would be 5,400. Our actual water meter numbers are 5,400 change, but I don't need to do 5,400. So 5,400 water meters plus several of the same things that we talked about in there. And so a hardware cost on this project comes out to about $700,000. Now we have to factor in as well as there's going to be installation costs on this. The installation of these meter readers would be too much for our public works department to handle. We'll still do everything else. So we would contract out. Also, there are contractors who have specifically worked with these meters and these systems and can get them done a lot more rapidly. So we estimate that somewhere around $400,000 for installation costs, bringing our total somewhere in the area of $1 to $1.2 million. So that's as we talked about, this is a pretty significant overhaul, but it's also one that almost every neighboring town will touch it. For some version of this. So that's the sticker price of it. On the plus side of this conversation is if you go back to our appropriations document, we specifically allocated 1.6 million for this project. Okay, that was with real funds that we could back up that was in our accounts right now, especially because this is specifically a water project, which is usually one of our healthier funds. That was before we made adjustments to some of our revenue streams, and especially as it relates to sewer right now. So the additional revenue that would be garnered from that would be directed right at this project. So money in for water and sewer, money out for improved waters.
roughly 160,000 savings if we do it all at once based on these.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get small savings by buying more. And the reason, there's two reasons that from a staff standpoint, we recommend considering doing the full project. And one, we have the funds available now. Two, while there are some pros and cons to doing one phase at a time and troubleshooting it as we go, the fact of the matter is the troubleshooting is going to have to happen with any truck no matter what, right? There's going to be some of these pieces that don't work, need to be replaced. There's going to be the guys having to learn how to use the equipment, etc. So the troubleshooting is going to happen. I'd rather do it once and deal with the whole thing than troubleshoot four different installation kits. Okay. The second thing is just getting the order in and getting availability of the actual equipment. Okay, so like everything else in the world, the stuff is coming from 20 different countries with 20 different parts, right? So it's got supply chain issues. They are putting orders in for it now, but I would hate to get the first 1,500, 2,000, whatever we do, upgrade half the town, and now we're waiting 6 months to a year to do the other half the town, right? So if we can get it now, we should.
I agree with you, Mr. Logan, but also what if it breaks down? With those same issues about getting parts, would that person be without water or whatever?
No, it shouldn't affect anyone's actual water usage, like
The meters just stop working for whatever reason.
Well,
You're just gonna straight pipe into the house, right?
yeah, and then if we have meters go bad for any reason, the water keeps flowing, right? I mean, so
I just don't want the resident to be.
No, we're not looking for disruption. So there should not be any disruption to actual water usage. There should be, if we do it correctly, let's set line of troubleshooting aside, the only troubleshooting areas we should have to address are where the meters aren't reading correctly. And if we're being real honest with ourselves, we got, based on our antiquated system, we got water meter reading issues from one end of this town to the next. All right, because our equipment is sold and because the handheld equipment we use is antiquated, they don't even make the equipment we use anymore. So if accuracy is always a concern, but on day one, if 90% of the system works, we're gonna be a heck of a lot more accurate than we are the day before.
And is it gonna last?
There's warranties built into this.
I'm talking about I know technology changes all the time, so that's why I was asking.
Right, so there's a life expectancy of each sensor. I can tell you just from my own partner's house that she's had hers there for 10 years with no issues. The life expectancy on each of these, if any of them go bad, they get replaced. We probably would purchase a little bit of the surplus so that we have additional, like I said, troubleshooting purposes. But there are warranties and guarantees built into this in terms of making the investment. Like a lot of things, you're buying something big, if you're buying something that has electronic elements to it, and it doesn't work, you want to make sure that you're protected as possible. So we would be, obviously between, and then the same, we would hire a company a third party to do the install. We got to have some protections on that if they're not doing the install correctly, if we have issues with that. So there's a lot of steps we have to take, but we're confident.
So this is very good program. I agree completely. I guess I would just like to raise the issue because this is going to be the whole, something I think we really would like us to start to get to is we're reading the water meter, reading the water readings much better, more accurately, it's great. But what if the water just stops flowing because the sewer line collapses or water line collapses? And we've talked a lot here about the age of our water system, and it's a big concern. We've seen elsewhere how catastrophic that outcome can be. So I would just ask, could we please start looking at what we're going to do about our aging water infrastructure and start to really think about that. This is important. I agree. Got to be done.
I know I mentioned it before, with water tower too, this deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance, I say. But any streets that are being done, it's like you'll be seeing a bid pretty soon as well. The bid, then you'll be televised any streets we're doing next year. We'll televise the sewers, televise. Let's see what's underneath there. See if there's any repairs that we done proactively before we go by it. That's part of. Jim would always do sections of town, and he pretty much did the entire city over the last 5-6 years. He did tell me that, so I based off his knowledge. We're okay, but I told Burke Engineering for next season, he's going to put a bid together, televise all the stores that are possible streets that are doing this year. It's good to have information anyway. You might have something to replace.
Okay, as we discussed this morning, it might be in our best interest to invest in our own camera equipment.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
So, definitely, this is a problem that we're seeing is fixing right now. The capital of Mississippi really has no fresh water. So it's a real issue. I think the full solution is going to have to come from a bigger piggy bank than what we have at the state or federal level. But having a full burden plan in place for when that day comes, because we saw what happened in Dixmoor, we see what's happening in other parts of the country. It's going to keep happening.
It's important to maybe know where the real crisis is about to happen, at least we can go there and fix that.
I agree 100%.
I'd just like to say too, as far as being in favor of doing it all at once, I think it makes it easier for us to plan for the next big thing. We know this has to be done. And again, too, just the freeing up of labor in public works. I mean, between this and the garbage we're talking about, like a third of the workforce suddenly not having.
I can't overstate it. So we just got done with this conversation about what four guys in a truck deal with, all deal with. We're talking about 2 to 3 crews, half a month. And that's if everything goes relatively well, because then there actually going to be rereads on misreads, things like that. It's a lot of, and then I mean the numbers that you have for the bulk pickup, I did about that cost. All those translate pretty much the exact same way, right? Which is no, I mean when we look at labor costs per year, we're not saying we're going to save that money per se. We still want to pay our public works laborers. Fuel costs, we're not saying we're saving that fuel, that we probably will decrease a little bit. The point is that that's money, people, resources that are going to functionary things that can be automated, and they're not going to, here's 2 work orders in the 4th quarter, the 7th quarter, whatever else that we need to get done today, right? So that's this is a lot of this is about efficiency and creating better efficiency and practices in the city, which has been our goal from day one. I think these 2 issues we're talking about today, as well as water, it soaks up the most time with public works. And I think it won't happen overnight that the residents that we serve will go getting better responses and getting faster responses, but it will happen. We've seen it with the improvements in our building department, we've seen it in some other places. People will begin to notice once we're able to be much more attentive to their needs.
It's much more efficient, and that benefit I think across the board.
So the next step, I believe that this was been added together.
Yes, that, and I would probably move forward with getting some estimated costs in terms of installation. In terms of doing the installation should probably be good as well. So,
Any other questions? Thank you. Next, we have Cook County Public Health. I mean, sure they're all been here and knows the double part of the situation for Cook County Health. They're requesting to take it's really only one parking space because they already lost the one that's for vacant salad. They're asking for a parking space up that sign in the picture. But here's my question: do we just paint it yellow? It's more of a legal question. Cities over painted their own curves. Make the curve direct because yes, well,
Is that not that street?
yeah, yes. But the city of Wyoming really painted the curve.
Because they don't
do
do it.
They do have their own contractors that would be handling this work, and they would be paying for the signage themselves as well.
Right, so they're asking our permission.
They're asking for our permission. We already have an IGA with IDOT for this road for signage requirements, stuff like that. And this would just alleviate the double parking on Western Avenue and make it safer for offloading.
So it's going to the back.
No, it's a total of approximately 2 parking spaces directly in front of the county health.
Right. Okay, so that's for a truck to park in? Or that's
this is for patient drop off. Patient drop off.
drop off. Okay.
Because right now they're double parking and getting on and off the road, street.
Because that's gonna be an issue if it ever goes to a 2-way, right?
Yeah.
One problem.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And this has been reviewed by our engineer already, and there has been changes to their proposed loads.
Any other questions? All right, moving on. There's a golf cart refund back 2020.
okay, so this is our existing agreement with Paris Golf Cart, which provides our rotating lease of golf carts. So what happens as part of our renewal program for the past few years? What would happen is our 25 oldest carts would get cycled down, 25 new carts would be put in rotation. As part of our existing deal. Normally we do this at the end of the season. We're a couple of months or shy early at the end of the season. But like everything else, we're getting encouragement to get orders in equipment earlier.
We're making money, Tom.
It's, I'm waiting till the season ends, I'll produce some numbers for you. The numbers are up from last year, last year was a pretty good year, so it is, the golf course is profitable this year. Exact numbers, I'll provide those. I'm gonna do another, I'm gonna do this meeting, I apologize, I didn't do another revenue expenditure report for the council, and you can see within the revenue lines on the golf course, you can see the same things I see, which is what we projected and what we're seeing, more good than that.
Any questions? Now moving on, city clerk announcements we already had, city attorney,
Nothing much.
city administrator, anything else to add?
The only thing I wanted to add is, we have started, our rate tagging program for delinquent water bills. You might, be, some residents, business owners in your wards might notice that they're getting billed. But we did take advantage of the action that the council took last week to give the administration more flexibility to get people on, a payment plan. Our former, rules by ordinance were a little rigid and a little hard for some paycheck to paycheck, working families. Who, hard time to code, all that stuff for them to get, because our penalties are pretty good, our late fee penalties. If you ignore a bill for a few months, it really starts to stack up. So we want to get some folks back on good paper. We are seeing some good results from this. We've had people come in, get them on a reasonable payment plan they can afford. Our main thing that we're trying to drive towards is pay your usage and get on a plan to pay at least a portion of your late fees and make your bill regular. We want people to pay their usage, because that's what we pay for. And we want them to pay their, to get themselves on a plan where they're making regular payments. Those are our primary motivations over collecting late fees. The late fees are there to motivate you to come in, but we want to make sure that people are paying their usage and that we're trying to be as reasonable as we can on existing late fees and get you on the plan to move forward. But I will say, we did have something happen today as a result of this, that so our more senior water clerks just said they've never seen it happen. An existing business with a $260,000 water bill came in with a $35,000 check and says, "Can we give you one of these a month until we're even?" I said yes. But that in itself, that is, some of this will result in some better financial recovery for our water department. If you do get residents, business owners in your ward saying, "I got this, I don't think it's fair for us to say," have them come talk to us. We do have the tools and the means. And like I said, we're trying to be reasonable here to get people to pay what they owe.
As the council knows, as we discussed in the past, there isn't a lot compared to the 6,000 water meters, less than 100 that are in arrears of this high. So hopefully there isn't anybody contacting you, but just so you know, if they do, it's not just $50. Okay, it's a lot. Well, I know we have Alderman announcements, comments, or anything. We do have executive session.
Yes. I actually was putting together a first ward cleanup on Saturday on the 24th from 9 to 11. Just need somebody to pick up our trash when we leave it on the corners. And I want like these speeders, $5. So for the volunteers that's doing that. And if the street sweeper would come through after that, so it would be from like 9 to 11. On the 24th.
What day was it?
9/24, Saturday.
The street sweeper is still down, and we're working on taking ownership of that temporary replacement.
Was there one out today?
We got a demo.
Did everyone get into that?
The demo's out there. We're not releasing it till our own back. Locking it up with chains at the end of the night. That's the plan right now.
We don't actually own it, so.
Alderman, can you please send the administrators an email with the bill on there, please? I'm sure we could accommodate.
Yeah, I kind of gave it to you last night. When you took a picture of it.
Oh, okay.
If you can read my.
Hey, Larry. All right, any other Alderman comments, concerns, Alderman? No? We got executive session.
I guess I just wanted to say that I'm glad that we're actually going to be taking bulk pickup off and encourage us to take bulk pickup. And the water meters as well, both of those. Our public works really there's so much that they can do to beautify the island instead of giving us a day to day. So thank you.
Any other comments? Now we can motion to executive session. Welcome, Alderman Johnson, as well as the roll. Please say aye.
Aye.
Well, I can.
Okay, ready? Going to real regular session, all the rolls, I call the car, favor say aye.
Aye.
We discussed in executive session, labor negotiations, and that is it. So we are hoping to adjourn. All the criminals, they call the roll, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
You.
I want to hang out with the mayor.
Yeah, just have to think about it.
Yeah.